This is Hot Mic. Hot Mic. On the networks of WDAY. WDAY. Here's Dom Izzo.
Welcome back, everybody. Hour 2, ready to rock and roll on this Wednesday morning. We'll get more into the baseball decision coming up, about a half hour's worth of time on the Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe apparently being reinstated by Major League Baseball. In case you haven't heard, sources tell WDAY and Hot Mic that apparently John Wheeler is hanging it up on Friday. Last show will be Friday night at 6 o'clock. The man himself is back in studio to join us today. Wheel, it's great to see you, bud. Thanks for doing this.
Morning, Doc. Glad to be here.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I can't even, first off, you and I have been talking about you doing either less or stepping away for a little bit. But I actually heard the news, like, holy cow, I can't believe this is actually coming about. Tell us the decision on why. Why was this the time?
Well, the decision is always as complicated, right? But and I think largely unrelated to any decision-making process is the fact that last week did actually mark the 40-year anniversary of when I was hired. So that's a long time to be doing essentially the same thing. Now, the job's changed over the years, but its focus and its purpose hasn't. You know, it's still the same thing. And I love that job. But I am getting older, and it's a very busy job, and it exhausts me sometimes. And I need to see my people. I got things I need to do. And it's, you know, you get to be that age, and you just start feeling, you know, I don't have this anymore.
I get asked this often because I transplanted here, much like you. When did Fargo become like, I'm good. This is Fargo. I'm gonna put my roots here.
Well, it's definitely that now. My wife and I, in retirement, we're not leaving. And that's a really good question, because I told everybody in 1985 when I was moving to Fargo, not having lived here yet, I'll be there 3 years.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, 3 years.
I said the same thing.
Give me some time to perfect my craft, and then I'll go to someplace real. But you know, 3 years later, I was settling in, and you know, this is such a great company to work for, and you're treated well. You have job security in a business that doesn't offer job security. I mean, hey, they fire people here, but that's because you messed up. You know, it's not because they need a little more money today. And so the stability was nice. My wife and I mean, I came up here, I was single, and we were dating, we were serious.
Okay.
That fall, I bought the ring, so we got committed right away, kind of a long distance relationship for a few years there. But then we got married, and then a few years into marriage, we had our first child, and 7 years in, I changed. You know, I lived in a couple of apartments as a single person, bought a little house, and we bought another house. We still live in that second house. And the roots just grew. And, you know, they grow quietly, Dom. They grow quietly. And then one day you try to move your feet and you're stuck in the clay. And that's what happened. You know, it just became home. This is where my people are. It's where my family is. It's where my friends are. So I'm never leaving this place.
That's awesome. I was I never asked you that. So I was curious because, you know, I get asked that, well, when did it become for Fargo for you? And it was very similar. Like, it just came natural. I was here. I had family here. My family is now here. I have friends here. I was comfortable. I like what I was doing, and this become home now.
Well, and you probably weren't a Bison fan when you got here.
Definitely not.
But,
no.
But the sports situation here is unique and wonderful.
Yep.
I wasn't a Fargoan at all, you know. But yeah, it just the place grows on you. And by the way, it's become this really kitschy, cool town.
Really is.
Since I moved here.
Holy cow! Well, even like since I got here in 06, Wheel, downtown is unbelievably different. I can't even imagine what it was like when you got here in the mid '80s.
It was largely vacant.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember there was one period in there where there was some guy had apparently, don't know who this is, so I'm not getting in trouble here, but some guy who was obviously off his medicines was writing Haldol kills on all the buildings downtown. Boy. This went on for months. And I don't know why it was vacant. It was vacuous.
And there was nothing there. Yeah.
And another reason that it's become home is there's great weather here. I mean, professionally, just like you, you you had Bison UND and all the great,
Yep.
Dragons, college, all the great sports that's here in town. And I'm not naming everything. The weather here is the weather we've got this week is
wild
for a professional.
right?
It's really wonderful and cool.
I bet. Because it's not San Diego where, 75 and sunny. What are we going to talk about every day? Like literally we're going 90 to 40.
Yeah.
Right? In a 4-day span.
Going heat wave to frost.
Was meteorology, weather, math, was that always your favorites? Like when you were a kid growing up, was that something you were always attracted to?
When I left high school to go to college, I was going to be an engineer. And that changed in the first term to meteorology. But I have memories of being back in grade school in Alabama and telling classmates, telling kids what the high was going to be that day. And I don't know where I got that information, probably on the news the night before.
Yeah.
So I think I was probably kind of a weather geek pretty early. That kind of stuff fascinated me. The numbers of weather. 47. Ooh, wow. What is that? This sounds stupid, but it was that. It was that.
Yeah.
It was, why does it feel colder today when my dad tells me it's 50 when yesterday it was 40? But it feels colder today. It was windy. But, why is that? How does that work? That was cool stuff for me as a little kid.
Yeah. The transit, was that a hard conversation to have with your parent about going engineering and meteorology? Was there any tough call on that, or no, this is what I want to do?
I told them. I didn't ask them. They were like, well, do whatever seems to make you happy.
Yeah.
And it was actually, looking back, you take all those college entrance exams and you take those aptitude tests and things like that. And the things that I scored really high on, I kind of wasn't believing, but I scored very high on, these are not like knowledge, but interest, right? I scored really high in science, and I scored really high in communications and speech and things like that. I didn't score that high in the things that make engineering. And I was like, oh, whatever, I'm going to be an engineer. I had a great uncle who is my grandmother's little brother, who was a kind of a famous engineer. He was one of the first 7 employees at Texas Instruments.
Holy cow.
Coming out of World War II.
Wow.
And he had several patents to his name, including a night goggle thing that the military still uses. He and another relative patented bumper bowling.
Oh,
wow. Yeah, I mean, this guy,
holy cow.
He had a James Bond house. I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be an engineer. But what it was, Tom, is I found out that first semester what engineers do. What engineers do is you're working on a team on a little project that's to build or design a small part of a microwave or something like that. And I'm always a big picture. I thought I'd be making a bridge or a microwave No. Weather, though, is big picture.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
It's very much macroscopic, and that, to me, is the draw.
Affects everybody. The weather does.
And it's just, just big. And the mechanics of it, that's what I'm talking about. The dynamics of weather are large, and to be that communicator who spends half the day looking at the weather, figuring it out, and trying to make a forecast, and then the other half of the day explaining what's going to happen to people in a way that makes sense to them and is useful to them, or trying to do that. That's been a wonderful job. I still love doing that every day.
When did the TV angle come in? When did that for you? So you went meteorology and you're doing that in college. When did the television aspect come in to say, this might be a path for you?
That was always the path. When I changed from, without even talking to anybody, when I decided to switch to meteorology, it was to be on TV.
Yeah.
I had my heroes were weather presenters back in the 70s.
How many in those days, though, were actual, you may not know the answer, were actual meteorologists on television? Were they more presenters? They weren't meteorologists?
There were some, and there had been some going way, way back and they were rare, but there were a few, and these were mostly people who had been in the Air Force in World War II or in the 50s and were trained meteorologists and got into television somehow. There weren't that many, but it was I graduated high school in 1979. So at that point in time, it was a growing trend that TV stations were putting actual meteorologists on TV. It wasn't uniform yet, but it was definitely the trend. So it was a good time to get in.
How did then the Fargo opportunity come about?
I graduated college in May of '84, and got a job with the university painting dormitories while I was,
Nice.
well, you have to break into the business.
Right. You got to do right.
You had to have a tape then.
Yep.
Now you have a reel that's online, but
Correct.
then you had to have a tape. And, my tape wasn't that great. And I had.
Where is that tape? Can we find that tape anywhere? Is that in the archive somewhere?
I don't know if it's here. I had an internship partway through college at an actual TV station, so I had a tape there. It wasn't very good, and that wasn't getting me hired, so I knew I needed to get a better one. I eventually got hired that September by a WITV, which was a station there on the campus at Iowa State at the time.
Okay.
And I had it was the weekend meteorologist job. It was 2 shows, Saturday at 10, Sunday at 10, and so I was paid, I think, $6 an hour for 10 hours a week. And the rest of the time I was supposed to be a student. Well, I had just graduated, so I re-enrolled as an English major, which had always been I discovered through college that was kind of my other passion anyway. By the next spring, by the next March, I wasn't making any money. It was poverty. I knew it was time to start shopping myself around, so I applied. Dewey Berquist, who had been the weatherman here for almost 30 years, had retired in January. They had hired a guy who bailed.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, not everybody knows that story. They had hired a guy who accepted. We weren't doing contracts then at WDAY.
Okay.
It was a handshake only. They had, I think, they had a full-page ad in the Forum ready to go the next day that he's coming. And that day he called and said, "Yeah, I took a different job.
Oh.
I'm turning it down." So they
opened it up,
reopened it, and I applied that time, and I got it.
Wow.
It was a nice bit of serendipity there, because 40 years later, here I am.
That's amazing. I did not know that that part of the story. I've had people in my orbit since the news came out come up and they're visibly, I don't know if upset, but bothered that you're going to be done. What does that mean to you to hear that?
It's gratifying, but it's also false. I'm sure Dewey Berquist got the same thing. And I know Marv Bossert got that. And people said WDOI will not survive the
I'm not watching anymore.
I'll never watch it again without Marv. And I get the disappointment. But these call letters and these people who are here and the weather staff that we have in place that, I've had some role in building. Well, I didn't build it myself. It's this company. It's still going to be the best product. And so it's going to be just fine. And the other thing is, the microphone, but the TV camera especially, kind of inflates one's greatness. Not to me, but to the people watching. I'm not that great. It's just I'm a guy who had a job for 40 years. And that's a long time, but others have done. I'm not Abraham Lincoln, come on. I'm not even Dom Izzo.
All right, come on. No, now you're being preposterous now.
Now, come on.
I would know, because I think you're downplaying. I think certainly the level of importance when you're on, and I'll say this because I work side by side with, especially on a late night when I was still anchoring the sports, and you're here and I'm here at midnight. Like, Wheel, what's going on? Like, well, we got storms coming, and you're here till 2:30 at night to make sure you're handing it off to the first news team because we got tornadoes somewhere in Fessenden or somewhere out in northeastern North Dakota in July. That was your go time. I always loved seeing it because it was like, all right, it's go time. We got stuff going on, and people were attached to that because when you came on, it's a big deal. It's a big MFing deal when you came on the screen.
One thing I've always tried to do, and I think the staff will continue to do this way, is you don't break into programming unless you need to.
You and I would always talk about this.
And the weather doesn't need to be hyped because it hypes itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you've got a situation that is potentially serious, and that's always a game call. That's a game time call. So sometimes, maybe we did carry on a little long for a storm that had weakened. But I'm real proud of the fact that, we've never had a death from a tornado when I wasn't on the air covering it. And I'd like the idea that the WDAY team has developed a reputation of not hyping the weather, because that means you can trust us to be doing our best when it's serious and not just trying to gather viewers or raise attention or
Clicks.
or whatever,
Yep.
or get clicks,
Yep.
all that stuff.
Let's break. I want to talk some non-weather stuff because you are a monster sports fan. I don't know if people know that about you. So I want to do that. I got one special guest I want to bring on as well. So we're going to break. Much more. We got Wheel for another about 15 minutes here. Back on Hot Mic here on WDAY Extra right after this.
Courtney, being this is your first birthday to be celebrating with Dom, I would like to personally wish you a very happy birthday today.
Do you remember doing that?
Yeah, I
That
do.
is old school. That
do.
was in 2013 for my then girlfriend that I asked you to do that one day. And lo and behold, she's now my wife. I don't know if that was the cincher, but in terms of favorite WDAY personalities, it's you. I'm way down there. There's no doubt. Courtney joins us, my lovely wife, teaching today because she wanted to come on and say congratulations. So good morning, Court. How's it going?
Good morning. It's going well. Good morning, John.
Hi, Courtney. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. John, I just wanted to tell you, this being your last official week at WDAY, I'd like to officially wish you a very happy retirement.
Thank you so much. you know, Courtney, you're as a teacher. I come from a family of teachers, so there's always been a click. My dad was in education. My mom was a teacher. My mom was my high school theater and speech coach, even.
Oh, wow.
And my dad was I think a fairly brilliant math teacher. He later went back to school, got his PhD, and finished his career doing mathematics curriculum for the state of Iowa. And
Good for him.
but teachers. Man, I think back here in the twilight here of my career, it's teachers that got me here, and I think of several. There was an elementary school teacher that we had for the end of fourth grade and all of fifth grade, because of the fact that our fourth grade teacher was having a baby, and this was Alabama in about 1970. And once she started to show, they said, "You can't be here anymore." So they brought in somebody else, and we got her the next year, and I don't know. She was an inspiration. I learned grammar from her, and how to diagram sentences, and we just clicked. I loved her, and there was a senior social studies teacher. It taught a class called Contemporary Problems, and what a wonderful class to have your senior year in high school. We did things like we voted in a voting machine.
Oh, wow.
Which they had in Iowa. We filled out a tax form. We had one exam that was a 1040. And
that's wild.
Yeah, it was crazy stuff. And every day we'd talk about what a great class.
Yeah.
And then there was a college professor. He was my second semester composition teacher. And then I later took a couple of courses from him, English courses, just otherwise. And he taught me more, I think, about critical thinking and communication than anybody that I ever learned from. Every time you write anything, ask yourself these three questions. I can hear his southern drawl. What do I mean? How do I know? And so what?
That's good. That's awesome. Yeah.
And if you can't answer those questions about every sentence, about every paragraph, or every paper, toss it up and do it again.
I know you got to roll here soon, but we got to show. Court and I found this yesterday of when we got married. Wedding photo we took with I think almost all of the WDAY people were there, and look who she's hugging. She's not hugging me. We just got married. She's hugging you. Come on.
Look at that.
It was because of that video you sent, John. That really was.
Dom,
Dom knew the way.
Are you even
Dom
in
knew
the
the way to
picture?
my heart.
Courtney said the same thing. Am I in the picture? I'm right there. It's a Stacy and Kolpak, Drew and Kirsch. I mean, come on, man.
That was one of the most delightful weddings, I must say, that I've ever attended. It was just a joy. it was a joy being there. So I will say that off the top. Wow, that was a great day.
I appreciate that. We had fun. Before you go, you got to tell, because you told me this story, Court, of like you've literally grown up with Wheel. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, 40 years. I'm barely older than than that, just a few years. But John, you've been my meteorologist literally my whole life. I grew up. We were a Channel 6 family. I mean, I grew up. My voices were, John Wheeler, Marv Bossert, Peter Jennings. Every once in a while, when I was a little older, we'd click over to Jeopardy. So a little Alex Trebek maybe thrown in there for good measure, but. Yeah, literally my whole life was John Wheeler telling me the news or the weather, sorry. And even as an adult with, being a teacher, listening for those weather reports, into the evening to find out, was school going to be late? Even as a teacher, we want those weather reports. When I told some of my colleagues, I think I got the message a little earlier maybe than the general public. So when I shared that you were retiring, I had quite a few colleagues that were also sad about the news that you wouldn't be their meteorologist either. Some science teachers that were sad, along with quite a few others. So you've just been our guy, So very,
thank you.
very happy that you'll get to enjoy your time off, but also sad to see you go. So
Thank you, Courtney.
That was awesome.
absolutely.
I know you got to get back to work. Thanks for popping on this morning. I appreciate it. I love you. I'll talk to you later, okay?
All right. Have a great day. Thanks, guys.
We'll see you later. There she goes. My wife. Again, that we found that photo. Yeah, she said the exact same thing. Am I even in the photo?
No, you weren't in the photo. What's up with that?
I have to share two things here before we go. We're running short on time. Of how crazy a sports fan you are. You love your Iowa State Cyclones. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But the one thing I always love talking about, you'd be like, Dom, I don't know if you saw this on ESPN Classic the other night. You must be the only person who's devastated that ESPN Classic isn't around anymore. Because you would watch, you'd find either an old college game from the 1970s would be on, or the American Gladiators would be on. We talk about that. You love that.
I still do. A lot of those old college games are on YouTube.
Yeah.
And that's what I do when I don't have anything to do, which isn't very often. The last game I watched was the Sugar Bowl in 84, Georgia, 83 or 84, I forgot, Georgia versus Texas. It was that year when Brigham Young won the national championship. But there are all these great teams with like one loss. And Texas was ranked number 2 and would have won the national championship undefeated had they beaten Georgia and Herschel Walker. But they lost that game because a guy muffed a punt return late in the fourth quarter. Georgia had not gotten inside the 40-yard line. And what a great game. And yes, I love watching old college football. See, I grew up in Alabama.
Yes.
And that's the religion there. I mean, a lot of people think it's the Baptist church. I mean, that's important too to Alabamians, but football's number 1.
Alabama football's number 1, right?
And Auburn.
Well, Auburn now, but Auburn wasn't when you were growing up.
Well, it was Alabama. You couldn't mention one without the other.
Okay. But they weren't relevant,
Auburn
though,
won
were
a
they?
national championship in 57.
Okay.
And the game was, in fact, when I was just really starting to watch football, Auburn was a better team. Bear had kind of a few leaner years in the late 60s, early 70s, and Auburn was beating them year after year. And so, yeah, Alabama and Auburn. And by the way, in the South, it's not pronounced Auburn. It's pronounced Auburn.
Is that right?
Auburn. You
were telling me off air about this, and you got to share this before you go, because you've got, obviously, you and Emily are going to do some traveling. Is one to Bryant-Denny Stadium? Are you going to get to Tuscaloosa?
When I lived there, I never went to a game. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is because I asked my dad every year for my birthday, can we go to a football game? And his answer was always, Johnny, I don't know the governor. It was a tough ticket.
I bet.
And part of it was, this is bizarre. This is Alabama football. But in the 60s and into the very early 70s, they didn't play very many home games. They would have maybe 3, maybe 4 games a year that were in Tuscaloosa. They would play at least 3 games a year in Birmingham.
No kidding.
At Legion Field. And they would usually play 1 game at Mobile, Alabama.
Oh.
They'd play somebody like Tulane. It'd be a non-conference game. Somebody like Tulane or Tampa had a football team back then. or Miami or Florida State, and because these were bus trips,
Yep.
and so they wouldn't play very many games at Tuscaloosa, and actually, home games at Tuscaloosa you couldn't get them, you couldn't get a ticket, and back then Alabama wasn't on football that often, on TV that often,
yeah.
because nobody was, and so anyway, I never got to go to an Alabama football game. I had a friend who went once, and so I'd like to do that one of these years soon.
All right, well, let's see here. The 2025 home schedule here. I believe they play Bunnell's Wisconsin Badgers. You can go there.
Yeah.
That's a beatdown. You're not gonna lose that game. Vanderbilt. That's a revenge game there.
There's a November game they play that has my eye. They play Oklahoma.
Yes.
And the reason that has my eye is being an Iowa State guy. And since Oklahoma's kind of met their demise a little bit in the SEC, I might like to go and root for the Tide.
Rub it in. There you go. We're looking at some photos here. It was awesome to share the desk with you. And anytime that I could get Wheel to crack, if I said something that I knew I did a good job. And I know sometimes you come over after we did a First Down Friday, say, hey, that was a really good show. You guys did a really good. That meant the world to me. And I took pride that I never really bugged you about the weather unless it was something big that we had planned in sports. Like, hey, or you would come to me actually most often and say, hey, just a heads up, Friday night, we're going to have that's probably going to delay games, or games are going to be affected. I always love
lightning, rain.
Yes, and you did that without me prompting you, which was awesome. I always appreciated that because you helped us out time and time again on that part.
Well, it's been a pleasure working with you too, Dom, and the energy that you brought to this microphone and the other microphones is contagious, man.
I appreciate that.
You make it exciting. It's been a pleasure working with you these years, and I will continue to watch.
I appreciate that. I know you sent me a text the first day we were in here with a hot mic in big capital letters and exclamation points. That made the world of me because we were doing something different, and it's not about me, it's about you. But I really appreciate that. I really appreciate you came by.
Yeah,
congrats, UNM. Enjoy life, go travel, man, and don't be a stranger around here. Okay.
Thank you very much.
The legend, John Wheeler's final show is Friday night. 6 o'clock on WDAY, 40 years here at Channel 6. Awesome job, bub. We'll break. We come back. I don't know what the heck we're going to do for the next half. How do we recover after that? We'll figure something out for the final half hour of the show. Back on Hot Mic right after this.